Good afternoon, YouTube. Welcome to the Piper Report. I want us to watch a video together. This deals with the whole climate change scenario happening right now. And this pundit right here, this woman, I forgot her name, she is the one that said Donald Trump committed treason. I have a video on my channel. I'll put the link in the description. And it's so funny because she's trying to push this treason charge against Trump, and she's talking to a past U.S. attorney. And he's just like, no, are you kidding? No. You can tell she's desperately trying to make Trump look like a traitor. But so whenever I see her, I kind of laugh at that. I really can't take her serious ever, but let's watch this.
Up front now, David Gergen, former presidential advisor to four presidents, John Avlon, editor-in-chief of the Daily Beast, and Jason Miller, former senior communications advisor for the Trump campaign. David, this was a landmark global agreement, right? There were only two countries until today that were not privy to it, Nicaragua and Bashar al-Assad's Syria. Now the United States joins that group. Is this an unprecedented decision?
Yes, and I'm sorry to say this, but Aaron, listen, some 70 years ago, the United States entered an international agreement called the Marshall Plan when we came to the aid of Europe, and it was one of the noblest acts in human history. Today, we've walked away from the rest of the world, and it's one of the most shameful acts in our history. I think it will be widely seen around the world as a terrible setback for the planet. We represent.
And why exactly would it be considered a terrible setback for the planet? Because the biggest polluter of all time, China, doesn't get any type of reprimands in this deal. India doesn't get any type of reprimands in this deal. The only person who is getting punished in this deal, the only country, is U.S. We have to cut down on our energy, which is going to raise energy costs. I will go over that more soon, but let's watch some more here.
And as a country, 4% of the world's population, but we represent about a third of all the excess carbon dioxide that's now warming the planet. We're the largest.
Yes. You know why? Because our standard of living is higher. How about we start with this? How about all of these famous celebrities, these famous Hollywood actors? How about you tell them to stop using jets to get everywhere? Tell them to stop buying these cars. Tell them to walk to their studio. Obama just bought an $8 million house. What's the carbon footprint in that? They want to say that the U.S. is a leading polluter, and then they want to also punish the people that are in the middle class and the lower class by subsidizing these countries overseas to help them build better clean energy technology. That doesn't do anything for us. That may help out the rest of the planet, but the taxpayers are still getting screwed. So if you really want to help America, you really want to limit the carbon dioxide emissions, the carbon emissions, let's start with the rich people. Start with people cutting down how many times they fly in their plane. There is way more pollutants from those who preach the gospel to us in terms of politics, talking about the Hollywood celebrities, and then yet they don't do anything about it. All they do is just rhetoric for them, and the people that don't have the money they do, they are the ones that get punished.
Largest contributor to carbon dioxide in the world, and for us to walk away as this carbon dioxide threatens the future of our grandchildren, for us to walk away from that is grotesquely irresponsible. It's also true that the nations that are going to pay the greatest price for global warming are the poor nations of the world, and yet they've contributed the least to global warming. We have contributed the most. For us to walk away from that is immoral.
Let's go over that a little bit, though. The fact is, if we actually help those poorer nations become more industrialized, then they will have a higher carbon footprint, and they will contribute more to global warming. I know it's sad to say, it's really a horrible thing to even think about, but by helping the poorer countries, by industrializing them, by getting them to increase their carbon footprint, you are actually making the planet worse. Unless you actually bring down other countries' carbon footprints to compensate for that. So instead of starting with the U.S. and only the U.S., how about we go to China? How about we go to India? How about we reduce regulations there or increase regulations there? And then we can work on ourselves and the European Union.
What do you say, Jason Miller? Grotesquely irresponsible, one of the most shameful acts of our history.
Well, Aaron, I see it in a much different lens. First and foremost, I think it was great that the president upheld another campaign promise. I love the messaging of today, Pittsburgh, not Paris. And I think, look, for all of the sky is falling rhetoric coming from the left, I mean, look, Al Gore's private jet is still going to take off just fine tomorrow. While it may have been a binary choice whether to stay in the accord or to leave, it's not a binary choice when it comes to fighting for improving the environment and reducing carbon emissions, something that both the private sector and this administration are going to continue to do. But Aaron, there's one bigger thing that I haven't seen anyone talking about at all, and that's the political impact of this move today. I think that it was very remarkable that the lack of outcry and the lack of advertising efforts and lack of a political push that we saw from the left and from the Democrats on this, simply because their base is split. And the way that the president was able to split these union votes away.
I want to put politics aside. Politics, important here. But John, let me just ask you this question here, because what I think is important, and the point I tried to make at the top of our program is, I almost don't care about the politics. The reality of it is he says it's going to save jobs and billions of dollars. And CEO after CEO after CEO in this country who are in those industries say that's just a lie. Yep. They say it's not true. They say the future is in investing in green jobs. You see it from Jeff Immelt. Bob Iger, CEO of Disney, now the second CEO to pull off the president's economic...
Yes, the future is investing in cleaner jobs. I am glad what you just said here. You have just indicated that we should use the free market. Just because the U.S. decides not to subsidize foreign countries over this deal doesn't mean that the CEOs you are using right now, doesn't mean they can't do it, doesn't mean they can't invest in clean technology. Let the free market work. Instead of spending $100 billion a year for this plan, most of it paid by the U.S. taxpayers, let the CEOs work at it. Let the free market work at it. The whole point of this deal here, this climate deal, is for richer nations, primarily the U.S., to fund and subsidize programs in poorer nations. All it is a massive redistribution of wealth. That is all it is. It sounds good. It sounds good. Yeah, we're saving the world. But if you look at the statistics of this, actually, if everything went according to plan, if everything was followed in the Paris Agreement, by the year 2100, we would reduce the temperature by 0.17%. So in a century, 0.17%. And not only that, the aggregates they use to measure these statistics are always wrong. The last 15 years, climate change specialists and scientists had to alter their models of measurement because they are not adding up. Initially, this was called global warming. But then we see that it's not actually global warming, it's climate change. And guess what? Climate change has been happening for billions of years. It happens even before the first human walked on this earth. It happened before fire even happened by the hands of cavemen. So yes, climate change does happen. The measurement of how much climate change happens in terms of humans versus nature is still undetermined. We don't know exactly how much climate change is affected by human behavior. So they're guessing. And they had to constantly modulate their measurements of this, modulate their type of what the effect of the temperature will be at this so-and-so time. So yes, I'm all for clean power energy. I have a degree in energy management. But let the free market work. There's no point for the government to get involved and to subsidize other countries by punishing the middle class and the lower class.
Council. That happened just a couple moments ago, along with Elon Musk, the CEO of Goldman Sachs. I could go on and on and on. Watch the business networks. This is not a political reality. It's a dollars and cents reality.
Sorry, I had to pause it here. I had nothing to say except she looks really desperate. Like, please help me. Please help me. Look at her eyes and face.
And to your core point, the president said this was about defending American jobs. He said it was about defending American business. But America's business leaders overwhelmingly disagree with him, as well as scientists, as well as some polls showed the majority of Americans. So this is about playing politics inside the White House. It's about special interests, but the nationalist wing of the White House hijacking it and the globalists being, quote unquote, defeated. But the argument the president made that this was somehow good for business is on its face BS, because he's not being backed up by the CEOs.
Right.
That's interesting, because Rand Paul, he said that ever since Trump took office and reduced the regulations that Obama put on, he has seen massive job growth in his country. Rick Perry said in Texas, massive growth. The politicians, or the ones who pass stimulus packages, they have seen growth. And they predict growth from this. The problem, if there's not going to be any growth, is because the free market doesn't want to invest in it. Again, this all comes back to the free market. Why use the government to mandate people pay an extra tax by helping out other countries and punishing ourselves, but at the same time, leave China alone, leave India alone. Let them continue what they're doing with pollutants. First, let's rein in China. Let's rein in India. Once we get them under control, once they have to follow regulations and stipulations, then we could do a new deal. We can create a new climate deal that is favorable for everyone, that all of us can work together to build a better future. This deal only punishes the U.S. You can look at it. I will post the link of the deal in the description as well with the other video I'm going to post. You can read it. You can read it. All this is a mass redistribution of wealth from the richer countries, primarily the U.S., to the poorer countries to industrialize them, which will also increase the carbon footprint.
Hey, Jason, what do you say to that? It's not being backed up by them. And let me give you one number. I'm sure you have some, but let me give you this. In the United States, solar, 374,000 American jobs. Coal, barely 160,000 American jobs. This is the Department of Energy statistics. The growth, Jason, right now is in alternative energy.
Well, the reason why they call them green jobs is because they're so expensive to go and create. I mean, many of these green jobs aren't self-sustainable. They have to continue putting money into them. But I want to go back to a point just a moment ago when I was talking.
That is actually true, too. Yes, solar energy is good. Wind energy is good. However, they are always subsidized. They are always subsidized. My state has lots of wind farms, and they're all subsidized. It could be possible someday to live off of clean energy, but we have to work there slowly. We have to get there slowly and make sure the other countries are adopting our game plan, not beating us to the punch. Why should China get more jobs and better deals and America doesn't? It all comes down to that. That and, of course, the free market. All right, I'll let it play for a bit. I don't want to keep interrupting. You guys probably want to watch this now. Watch this guy right here. He gets really, really angry.
About the political realities of this. What I was talking about is the fact that the Democratic base is split, and the fact that so many Democrats, union workers, support the president's move today. That was the point that I was getting to. And this is where so many of the folks in the Acela corridor in New York and Washington just don't get where the rest of the country is on this. I mean, look, if we went into this accord and we fought with both hands tied behind our back, I mean, we would lose millions of jobs over the next couple of decades. I mean, it would the average household earning would drop by some $20,000.
Just no, those are like this, Jason,
no, those are not. No, those are irrefutable facts. You can't tell me to stop.
And fake stats.
No, those are not fake stats. No, those are not fake stats. You don't have the right to go and tell me.
The majority of Americans support staying in this, including Republicans. Second of all, the nature of this accord, Jason, the nature of this accord it can be negotiated.
Then Jason, I'll give you a chance to respond.
John, you might be just because you're talking louder, John. John, you don't tell me what to do.
Jason.
No, he doesn't tell me what to do.
Hold on, guys. I'm the anchor of the program. I'm the anchor of the program. Jason, please.
I'm the anchor of the program. Did Trump commit treason? I'm the anchor of the program.
Please be quiet for a second. Let John go. I will give you your chance.
It is a political decision that flies in the face of the will of not only the vast majority of Americans, yes, Republicans and Democrats, check your stats, but also the business leaders who have keener insights into the statistical impact of this than any pre-proved spin being given out by the White House for its surrogates.
Okay, Jason, please.
Yeah, John, I think it's absolutely shameful that you would allow the Chinese to continue going another 13 years without cutting their carbon emissions, while the U.S. would have to reduce between 26 and 28% over the last 8 years.
You're giving international leadership to
that
China.
is. Look, China's not going to follow it. India's not going to follow it. What they're going to look and see is that the U.S. actually is a country that follows the rule of law, that we would actually have enforcement mechanisms if we put something in place, whereas these other countries wouldn't do it. And so, look, you can talk, try to talk louder, you can try to shout me down, but the fact of the matter is the stats are on our side here, John, and that's the reality.
So, David, let me give you a chance to, David, I want to get you in on this, because this is an argument that they're making, right? That China, as an example, is allowed to let its emissions go until 2030, at which point they would stop growing, right? Wilbur Ross described that to me as a feeble enforcement mechanism. Is there something to that this is a feeble and a bad deal?
I listen. The enforcement mechanisms are feeble. That's why it's called an accord. To go to John Avalon's point.
Yeah.
But let's face the larger reality here, and that is that the 20th century was the American century. The way we're acting now, 21st century is going to become the Chinese century, because China is seizing the lead here on climate change, just as it's seizing the lead on international trade, and it's taking the leadership flag away from the United States. We increasingly across the world. I will just tell you.
Pretty sure that they didn't take it away from the U.S. Obama gave it away from the U.S. Obama acquiesced to every single country. He went on an apology tour, for God's sakes. So, no. And like I said, I am for clean energy. But this deal actually hurts Americans. It hurts Americans, and by default, it hurts America's allies. This is a bad deal, and needs to be renegotiated. It's that simple. It's not because we are anti-climate change or anti-clean energy. Nothing like that. I'm all for clean energy. But it has to be dealt with in a sufficient manner, in a proficient manner. You have to understand, you have to make a proper deal and rein in the countries that abuse the system, and not just redistribute your wealth to the smaller countries and let the big countries continue to dominate over the U.S. in the energy market. It's that simple.
Especially in Europe, there are a lot of people there who are going to see this as the United States is now in the hands of a madman of some sort, and they don't get it. They're upset about it, and they do believe that China is the country that's going to benefit the most from the United States pulling back.
But today, American workers will benefit, and that's the difference.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you all very much.
Alrighty, that was a pretty good video to watch, and I'm done.